Have you ever experienced the rush of wearing something that makes you feel unstoppable, something that elevates you from the ordinary to the extraordinary? Maybe it was that high-end outfit that made everyone in the room turn their heads, or that accessory that screamed luxury. But what if I told you that, for one woman, wearing a fake designer dress didn't just change the way she looked, it completely flipped her life upside down? Now, I know what you're thinking. A fake designer dress? What's the big deal? But trust me, this isn't just a story about fashion. This is about identity, perception, and the fine line between authenticity and imitation. Picture this: you walk into a room, confidently wearing what you know is a piece of luxury, something you saved up for, something that made you feel a sense of pride. But what if that feeling wasn't quite what it seemed? What if the designer label on your dress was nothing more than a clever illusion, a fake? But even more bizarre, what if that fake dress somehow caught the eye of the real designer? Intrigued yet? I'm sure you are, because this is where the story starts to get really interesting. Let me introduce you to MIA. She wasn't a millionaire or someone born with a silver spoon in her mouth, but MIA had always been passionate about fashion. Like so many of us, she dreamt of owning that one-of-a-kind, iconic piece from a designer that would catapult her from the ordinary into the extraordinary. The problem? That dream piece was far beyond her budget. But MIA was no stranger to hustle. She found ways to make things work, to get the look without the price tag. That's where the fake dress came into play. It wasn't like MIA was trying to deceive anyone, she just wanted to feel a little bit more special. But little did she know, this dress would become more than just an accessory in her life. It would become the spark that ignited a whirlwind of events she could never have predicted. What MIA didn't realize was that her fake dress wasn't just something she wore, it was something that caught the eye of the very designer who had created the real version of it. Yes, you heard that right. The real designer, someone with a name that could launch careers and redefine the industry, was about to notice her in a way MIA could never have anticipated. The question is, how could someone like MIA, who was just trying to make a smart purchase, become the focus of such high-profile attention? What happened when the designer who made the real version of the dress realized MIA was wearing something that looked so much like their creation, but was, in fact, a fake? And here's where it gets even juicier. What does the designer do about it? Does MIA get the chance to meet them? Does she get the recognition she never thought she deserved, or does something else entirely unfold? Now, I can already tell that you're on the edge of your seat, wanting to know what happens next. You've entered this video because you're curious, and I'm here to give you the answers you're searching for. But let me warn you, this story is anything but predictable. Just when you think you've got it figured out, something happens that throws everything into chaos. And I'm not talking about a simple misunderstanding here. Oh no, I'm talking about a twist that could change Mia's life forever. But here's the thing, you're going to want to stick around for the full story. If you leave now, you might miss the moment that could completely change how you look at the world of fashion and the fine line between imitation and inspiration. This isn't just a story about a fake designer dress, it's about identity, success, and how the world sometimes works in the most unexpected ways. So, trust me, you don't want to miss what happens next. As we move through this story, you'll start to see how Mia's choice to wear a fake dress wasn't just a fashion statement, it was a stepping stone toward something far bigger. It's easy to assume that wearing a fake item means you're simply pretending to be something you're not, but what if that wasn't the case? What if, in wearing something that wasn't real, MIA was simply showing the world the lengths she would go to in order to feel like she truly belonged? And what if that dress was the key that unlocked an opportunity of a lifetime? I can promise you this, Mia's journey is just beginning, and things are going to get wild from here on out. So stay with me. Keep watching, because the next part of this story, it's going to leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about success, fashion, and the power of authenticity. I'm not giving you all the answers just yet, but I promise you'll get them soon enough. Just remember, sometimes, wearing a fake isn't as simple as it seems. Sometimes, it leads you right into the path of something real. So, what happens when the real designer approaches MIA? How does she respond? How does this unexpected encounter change the trajectory of her life? Well, you'll have to stick around to find out. Trust me, the ending will be worth it. Are you ready to hear the rest? Keep watching. The best part is just around the corner, and you won't want to miss it. Emma had always felt like she was on the outside looking in. Growing up in a small town, she wasn't surrounded by the glamour and glitz of high-end fashion. Her family was modest, and while they worked hard to make ends meet, the world of luxury labels and designer trends felt like a distant dream. MIA never cared much for what others thought about her. Instead, she found comfort in the things that made her feel unique. Yet, as the years passed and her world grew larger, so did her desire to belong to something bigger. She wanted to be noticed, to feel that rush that came with wearing something truly spectacular, something that spoke to her identity in a way no regular outfit ever could. She wasn't alone in this desire. All around her, people, especially women, were obsessed with status. Instagram was flooded with influencers flaunting their latest luxury buys, and MIA couldn't help but scroll through those perfect pictures, feeling a mix of awe and envy. But what really drew her in wasn't just the dresses or the handbags, it was the way these women seemed to have it all figured out, living a life she could only dream of. For MIA, the pressure to keep up with those around her, both online and in real life, began to feel almost suffocating. She'd spent years working as a freelance graphic designer, bouncing between gigs, always looking for the next job to pay her rent and keep the lights on. But no matter how hard she worked, the money never seemed to stretch far enough to afford the things she really wanted. That's when she first discovered the online world of replicas and knockoffs. It wasn't about faking it to impress anyone, it was more about fulfilling her own need to feel included in that world she admired so much. She'd spent countless hours on various websites, scrolling through endless pages of designer-inspired pieces that were a fraction of the cost. It felt like a secret, something that no one would know unless she told them. At first, MIA wasn't sure if she could pull it off. What if someone noticed? What if they could tell the difference between the fake and the real deal? But with every purchase, she gained more confidence. She picked carefully, always choosing pieces that were so close to the original, no one would ever question them. That's how she ended up with the dress. The one that would change everything. The dress was a perfect replica of a limited edition piece from a well-known designer, elegant, timeless, and utterly stunning. It had cost her more than she was comfortable admitting, but MIA justified it by telling herself that it was an investment. This was her chance to show up at that upcoming party her friend was throwing and turn heads. She could already imagine the gasps when she entered the room, the admiring glances. MIA wasn't someone who loved being the center of attention, but when it came to fashion, she craved the validation, the recognition that came with looking the part. As she prepared for the party, something strange happened. Mia's mind kept racing, playing out different scenarios in which people would question the authenticity of her dress. Could they tell it wasn't real? She thought about the conversations she had overheard in cafes, the way people would subtly mention the latest trends, subtly sizing up others based on their clothing. It made her nervous. But the closer she got to the party, the more determined she became. She would wear the dress, own it, and make it her moment. At the event, MIA felt every pair of eyes in the room land on her the moment she walked through the door. She smiled, holding her head high, and for the first time in a long while, she felt like she was exactly where she was supposed to be. But the attention didn't last long. A woman, tall, elegant, dressed in a designer suit, approached her, her eyes scanning MIA from head to toe. "That dress," the woman said, her voice calm but laced with something sharp. "Where did you get it?" MIA froze for a moment, her heart pounding. She had no idea who this woman was, but there was something about her gaze that felt piercing. She struggled to find her words, caught off guard by the directness. I found it online," MIA stammered, her mind racing. "It's a replica." The woman nodded, but there was a hint of a smile on her lips. She didn't say much more after that, but MIA couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. She felt as though she were being watched, not just by this woman but by the entire room. The rest of the night passed in a blur. MIA was no longer focused on the dress, but on the strange interaction that had unsettled her. Who was that woman? And why had she approached her like that? The following day, Mia's phone buzzed with a notification, a message on Instagram. The name on the screen made her heart skip a beat. It was from the designer herself. At first, MIA thought it was a joke. Some kind of prank or a fake account. But as she read the message, her disbelief grew. The designer was reaching out to her, commenting on how flattered she was that MIA had chosen to wear a dress inspired by her collection. It wasn't just a simple compliment, it was an invitation to meet. MIA didn't know what to think. Was this some kind of bizarre twist of fate? Was she being taken seriously, or was it all a game? She started asking herself questions she hadn't considered before. How did the designer even know about her? Could the woman from the party have something to do with it? And if this invitation was real, what could the designer possibly want with her? Was MIA about to be part of a collaboration, or was something far more complicated going on? As she navigated this unexpected turn of events, the sense of unease grew. Every time she thought she understood the situation, a new layer of uncertainty unfolded. What seemed like a simple brush with fame was now looking more and more like a tangled web of mystery and intrigue. MIA didn't know it yet, but her world was about to collide with the kind of high society she'd only seen in magazines. And at the center of it all was the question: how far would she go to stay in this new world, and what would she have to sacrifice to keep her place in it? Was the designer truly interested in her, or was there something deeper at play? Could she trust the people around her, or was she being set up for something far darker than she could imagine? The message from the designer had left MIA with more questions than answers, and as much as she tried to remain calm and logical, her mind couldn't help but spiral. It all felt too surreal. It wasn't just the dress anymore, it was everything surrounding it. The designer's sudden interest in her was one thing, but there were things MIA didn't understand. For example, why had the woman at the party seemed so certain about the dress? Why had she mentioned it so casually? There was something in her tone that MIA couldn't shake, like she knew more than she was letting on. The next few days were filled with back-and-forth thoughts, self-doubt, and growing anxiety. MIA kept rereading the message, overthinking each word. The offer to meet up with the designer sounded genuine, almost too genuine, and the more MIA thought about it, the more it started to feel like she was being drawn into something much bigger than she was prepared for. Still, she was determined to figure out the truth. After all, the world of high fashion was a dream she'd chased for so long, and now it seemed within her grasp. But at what cost? She decided to take the plunge. MIA agreed to meet with the designer, hoping that this face-to-face interaction would clear up some of the confusion. The meeting was scheduled for a luxurious cafe downtown, a place MIA knew well from her Instagram feed. She arrived early, trying to shake off the nervousness in her chest. The restaurant was sleek, with chandeliers that glittered overhead and an air of exclusivity that made her feel out of place. It was clear that the designer was used to this world, while MIA was still learning to navigate it. When the designer finally arrived, MIA was almost too intimidated to speak. She was everything MIA had imagined: elegant, poised, and utterly in control. The conversation began casually enough, with the designer complimenting MIA on her taste and eye for detail. But MIA couldn't shake the nagging feeling that there was something off. It was as though the designer was testing her, pushing her to reveal more than she was willing to. And as the meeting progressed, Mia's suspicions grew. The designer didn't seem interested in just complimenting her or praising her fashion choices. There was something deeper, an underlying agenda. But before MIA could figure it out, her phone buzzed. It was a notification from a message she hadn't expected. Her laptop, the one where she kept all of her notes and design ideas, had been accessed. Someone had logged into it remotely. Her heart dropped. It wasn't just a hack, it was personal. She hadn't shared her login details with anyone. Not even her closest friends knew the password. Panic set in as she wondered if someone had been watching her every move. Was someone trying to get ahead of her? What did they want? In a frenzy, MIA returned home, trying to retrace every step of the past few days. She went straight to her computer, desperate to check her files, but when she opened it up, her heart sank. The document with all her research on the designer and her collections, the one that had consumed her late nights, was gone. Completely wiped out. The folder was empty, and no trace of the document could be found. She searched the recycle bin, checked the cloud storage, but it was like it had never existed in the first place. The more she tried to recover it, the more she felt as if someone or something was actively working against her. The following day, MIA met up with her friend Jenna, the one person she thought she could trust. But even Jenna seemed distant, her responses a little too rehearsed, like she knew something MIA didn't. When MIA mentioned her missing files and the suspicious activity with her computer, Jenna's face went pale. "MIA, I don't think you should be digging any deeper," she said, her voice tight with concern. "I know you're excited about this, but you don't know what you're getting into." MIA was taken aback. Why was Jenna acting like this? What did she know that MIA didn't? She had never been one to shy away from a challenge, and the fact that Jenna seemed so worried only made MIA more determined to uncover the truth. "What do you mean?" MIA asked, her voice a little sharper than she intended. "What's going on? You're acting like you know something." But Jenna quickly changed the subject, trying to brush it off with a laugh. "Forget it, okay? I'm just looking out for you. I don't want you to get hurt." The conversation ended there, and MIA left with more questions than answers. What did Jenna know about all of this? Was she genuinely concerned, or was she hiding something? And why, suddenly, did it feel like MIA was being cornered by people she thought she could trust? The next few days were a blur of confusion, frustration, and growing paranoia. MIA couldn't stop thinking about the message from the designer. She had to meet with her again, there were too many unanswered questions. But when MIA tried to contact her, the designer's team said she had cancelled all future meetings due to unforeseen circumstances. No explanation. No reschedule. It was as if the designer had vanished without a trace. MIA felt the walls closing in on her. She tried reaching out to other contacts in the fashion world, but they were either too vague or completely unresponsive. Her online search about the designer revealed nothing new, and the more she dug, the more elusive everything became. But there was one thing MIA hadn't yet explored, the mysterious woman from the party. The one who had known about the dress. Was she involved in this somehow? Was she the one who had erased Mia's files from her computer? What did she know that MIA didn't? As MIA sat at her desk late that night, staring at her empty computer screen, she felt a chill run down her spine. A sudden realization hit her. What if the designer wasn't the one she needed to worry about? What if the real threat had been much closer to her all along? Before she could make sense of it, her phone rang again, an unknown number. She hesitated, but something pushed her to answer. The voice on the other end was low, cryptic, and sent a shiver down her spine. "You're looking in the wrong place, MIA. Stop before it's too late." The line went dead. And just like that, MIA was left alone in the dark once again, the weight of a mystery growing heavier by the second. Who was that voice? What did it mean? Was she really in over her head, or was there someone out there pulling the strings, controlling her every move? The tension was thick now, and MIA knew she was on the edge of discovering something that would change everything, but what that something was, she still didn't know. "Stay with me, because this is only the beginning." SMA sat there, her phone still buzzing in her hand from that cryptic call. The weight of everything began to press down on her. She couldn't help but replay the words over and over in her head. "You're looking in the wrong place, MIA. Stop before it's too late." It was like the universe was conspiring to keep her in the dark, and every time she thought she was getting closer to the truth, the pieces of the puzzle scattered farther apart. She wanted to call someone, but who could she trust anymore? The more she thought about it, the more she realized that everyone seemed to have their own agendas, their own hidden motives. Her mind was spinning, the threads of her reality beginning to unravel in ways she didn't fully understand. It wasn't long before things took an even stranger turn. Her best friend, Jenna, had been acting off, and MIA couldn't shake the feeling that she was hiding something. That night, as MIA was scrolling through her social media feed, her heart skipped when she saw it. Jenna had posted a photo. Normally, this wouldn't be anything special. But the caption was what caught Mia's attention. "Sometimes, it's better not to ask too many questions. Trust the process." Mia's stomach twisted as she stared at the photo of Jenna standing in front of a luxury boutique, one that MIA had never seen before. There was something about the way Jenna was standing, the way she looked almost too comfortable in that space, that made Mia's blood run cold. Was this the same boutique where MIA had bought the dress? Or was it another one she didn't know about? What was Jenna really doing there, and why hadn't she mentioned it? The message felt like a warning, like a subtle way of saying, back off, MIA. Don't dig too deep. But why? It all felt like a tangled web of secrets, and the closer MIA got to unraveling it, the more knots appeared. She decided to confront Jenna the next day. There was no way around it, too much was happening, and she had to know what Jenna knew. The conversation started off normal enough, the usual casual chatter that they always had, but MIA couldn't shake the feeling that Jenna was keeping her at arm's length. Finally, MIA couldn't take it anymore. Jenna, what's going on? She asked, her voice more forceful than she intended. Why didn't you tell me about the boutique? Why are you acting like you know something I don't? Did you know something about this designer? About the dress? Jenna's face froze, and for a moment, MIA swore she saw a flicker of something, fear, maybe, pass over her features. Then, just as quickly, it was gone, replaced by a forced smile. MIA, I'm just looking out for you, okay, she said, her voice too calm. You're getting wrapped up in something that's way beyond your understanding. Some things are better left alone. Just trust me on this one, alright? Mia's instincts screamed that Jenna was hiding something, but before she could press further, Jenna quickly changed the subject, offering to grab coffee and distract MIA from the escalating chaos in her mind. It didn't take a genius to realize that Jenna wasn't being honest. But MIA couldn't figure out what, exactly, was going on. The more she pushed, the more Jenna pulled away, and every moment of tension only deepened the mystery. Was Jenna involved in all of this, or was she simply another victim, caught up in the same web MIA was? And why did Jenna feel the need to distance herself now? As MIA left the coffee shop that afternoon, her head spinning, she checked her phone again, only to find another unexpected message. This time, it wasn't from the designer or anyone close to her, it was from an unknown number. The message simply read, "If you want to find out the truth, meet me at the old warehouse on 4th Street. Midnight. Don't bring anyone." It was cryptic. It was dangerous. And it was exactly what MIA had been waiting for, an opportunity to uncover everything. But something in the pit of her stomach told her that this wasn't a friendly offer. It felt like a trap, and yet, she couldn't resist. She had to know who was behind this, who was pulling the strings, and why her life was being turned upside down over a fake designer dress. What was so important about it? Why had it become the focal point of such a twisted series of events? MIA spent the rest of the evening in a daze, wrestling with the decision. To go or not to go, she was walking a fine line between finding the answers she desperately needed and plunging headfirst into a nightmare she might never escape from. As the clock inched closer to midnight, her anxiety grew. She couldn't shake the feeling that everything she had believed up until now had been a lie. Nothing was as simple as it seemed. Jenna's sudden secrecy, the erased files on her computer, the designer's sudden disappearance, it all pointed to something darker, something sinister. At the same time, MIA couldn't ignore the possibility that maybe, just maybe, the person who sent the message was trying to help her. But help her with what? There was so much at stake now. She wasn't just after the truth anymore. She was after her own safety, after understanding who she could trust and who had been manipulating her from the very beginning. As midnight approached, MIA found herself standing outside the warehouse on 4th Street, the towering structure looming before her like a monolith in the night. It was abandoned, eerie, and cold. Everything about it screamed danger. But she had come this far. She couldn't turn back now. Her heart pounded as she stepped closer to the entrance, the echo of her footsteps seeming louder with every step she took. She had no idea what waited inside, or who had orchestrated all of this. But there was one thing MIA knew for sure, the stakes were higher than ever. And then, just as she reached for the door, a voice from the shadows stopped her in her tracks. "Did you think you could just walk in here and find all the answers?" Mia's breath caught in her throat. The voice was familiar, but the words, the tone, it felt like a challenge, like someone was daring her to move forward. She turned slowly, her eyes scanning the darkness, trying to make out who was there. But there was no face, no body, just the voice, cutting through the night. "You're not ready for what you're about to uncover." And with that, the door creaked open. The tension that had been building for so long suddenly snapped, and MIA stepped into the unknown, unsure of what would happen next but knowing, deep down, that nothing would ever be the same again. As MIA stepped inside the warehouse, The cool air hit her face, carrying with it the scent of dust and forgotten things. The door creaked closed behind her with a finality that made her heart race. She wasn't sure what she expected to find, maybe a person waiting to explain everything, maybe answers to the flood of questions that had been keeping her up at night. But the darkness seemed endless, wrapping around her like a heavy blanket, and for a moment, she wondered if she'd made a terrible mistake coming here alone. Every instinct told her to turn around, but her curiosity pushed her forward, making her take another step into the shadows. "Hello." Her voice echoed in the vast space, but no one answered. A tense silence stretched on, thick and suffocating. Mia's eyes adjusted to the dim light, and she noticed the outline of something, a figure, just barely visible at the far end of the warehouse. Her pulse quickened as she approached, each step deliberate, but her mind was racing with all the possible outcomes. Was this the person behind everything? The mastermind who'd been pulling the strings all along? When she reached the figure, she froze. Standing before her was none other than Jenna, her best friend. Mia's breath caught in her throat, and for a split second, she couldn't process what she was seeing. Why was Jenna here? Why had she lured her into this place? Was this some kind of betrayal? Jenna's expression was cold, guarded. She didn't seem surprised to see MIA at all, as though this was all part of the plan. "You shouldn't have come," she said quietly, her voice sharp and steady. "I tried to warn you." Mia's stomach churned as the realization hit her with full force. Everything that had felt wrong, all the times Jenna had acted distant, the cryptic message, the way she'd been so insistent MIA should drop the investigation, it was all part of something much bigger than she could have imagined. But what was Jenna's role in all of this? "What's going on, Jenna?" MIA asked, her voice trembling slightly despite her best efforts to stay composed. "I trusted you. Why are you here? Why didn't you tell me what you knew?" Jenna let out a long, slow breath, as if the weight of what she was about to say was too heavy to carry. "I didn't want to pull you into this, MIA. I never wanted you to know." Her eyes flickered briefly to the ground before meeting Mia's gaze again. "But you're too far in now, aren't you? You've already seen too much." MIA took a step back, confused and alarmed. "What are you talking about? What have I seen? What's going on with the designer, with the dress? Why are you acting like this is something dangerous?" Jenna's lips pressed together in a tight line. She looked around the room, as if making sure no one else was listening. "The dress wasn't the point, MIA. It never was." MIA stared at her, trying to understand. What did that mean? All of this, everything she had done, every late-night search, every conversation she had had with strangers online, it had all been leading up to this moment. Then what was the point? "You've been acting like everything was fine, like you were just protecting me, but it's been a lie, hasn't it?" Jenna's eyes softened for a brief moment, but then the coldness returned. "You never should have gotten involved, MIA. You didn't know what you were walking into. The designer, the one you thought was offering you a chance, was never who you thought she was." MIA felt the ground shift beneath her. Her mind raced to catch up, to piece together the fragments of information she had been holding on to. "What do you mean? Who is she really? And why have you been keeping this from me?" Jenna hesitated, the tension hanging in the air like a thick fog. "The designer is just the face of it all, MIA. She's part of a much bigger operation. But what you didn't realize, what you couldn't see, is that I've been a part of it the whole time. The dress was just a test, a way to bring you into this world." MIA felt a chill race down her spine. "A test? A way to bring me into what world?" Her voice cracked as the pieces began to fall into place, but she still couldn't see the full picture. Jenna's eyes narrowed as she took a step closer. "You've been looking at this all wrong, MIA. You thought you were part of a lucky break, a chance to be discovered. But this isn't about you or your talent. This is about control, about power." Her words felt heavy, like they were being weighed down by years of secrets. "The designer, she's been pulling the strings for a long time. But you were never meant to be her muse. You were meant to be her pawn." MIA took another step back, the shock of Jenna's words crashing over her in waves. You've been working with her? All along?" Jenna didn't answer immediately. Instead, she stepped further into the shadows, her eyes never leaving Mia's. I've done things, MIA. Things I can't take back. But you can still walk away from this. You can still leave. If you don't, you'll be in deeper than you can imagine. MEA felt as if the ground was slipping out from under her. Everything she thought she knew, the designer, the dress, even Jenna, had been a carefully crafted illusion. She was nothing more than a player in someone else's game. The stakes were higher than she could have ever anticipated. Jenna, the one person who she thought she could trust more than anyone, had been part of the very thing MIA had been trying to uncover. But there was something else, something even darker hanging in the air. The moment of truth had arrived, but the truth was far worse than MIA could have ever prepared herself for. What do you want from me? MIA whispered, her voice hoarse with fear. Jenna stepped forward once more, her face inches from Mia's. I don't want anything from you, MIA. But they do. And they won't stop until they get exactly what they want. You're already too deep in. They've been watching you, studying you. Every move you've made, every decision you've thought was yours, none of it has been yours. Mia's breath caught in her throat. She felt the weight of everything, the lies, the betrayal, the mystery, suddenly crash into her with an unbearable force. The questions she'd been asking, the answers she thought she was getting, had all been a distraction. And now, MIA had become a pawn in a game she didn't even understand. As the dark reality of the situation hit her, the door behind them suddenly creaked open. And standing in the doorway, bathed in the faintest light, was someone MIA never expected to see again, someone she had long since written off as a harmless ally. But now, standing there with a cold smile on their face, the last piece of the puzzle finally fell into place. The truth was even worse than MIA could have imagined. The game wasn't over yet, it had only just begun. And the rules? They were changing. As MIA stood frozen in the warehouse, her mind scrambled to process the gravity of Jenna's words. The last shred of trust she had in her best friend was slipping through her fingers, like sand caught in an unforgiving tide. Jenna's face, once a source of comfort and familiarity, now felt like a mask, a carefully constructed facade. Her best friend wasn't just a bystander in this twisted game, she had been an active participant, pulling the strings from the shadows, guiding MIA into a trap she couldn't see until it was too late. But what did Jenna want from her now? Was this some sort of power play? A final test? Or had Jenna simply been a pawn herself, doing what she thought was necessary to protect herself from a far greater threat? The questions spiraled, but the one that lingered above all else was, what did she owe the truth, and at what cost would it come? The door behind them creaked open again, and this time, the figure that stepped forward made Mia's blood run cold. It was Alex, her brother. Mia's stomach dropped, her heartbeat quickening as she struggled to comprehend the sight of him standing there in the dim light of the warehouse. Alex had always been a rock for her, a voice of reason, someone who knew everything about her, her ambitions, her fears, her dreams. But now, he was standing in the doorway like a stranger, a distant shadow. And worse, he wasn't alone. Standing beside him was the last person MIA ever expected to see, a person whose very presence seemed to unravel everything she thought she knew about her life. Their eyes locked, and for a moment, MIA thought she was going to faint. The shock was so overwhelming, the disbelief too intense to bear. Her mind couldn't process the reality of what she was seeing, and yet, it was undeniable. Mia's own father stood there, his face stoic, his expression unreadable. He had been absent from her life for years, never there for the pivotal moments, graduations, birthdays, even when she needed someone to turn to after the sudden death of her mother. But now, he was here. Now, in the very middle of this nightmare she had stumbled into, he was standing next to Alex, the brother who had always protected her, as if nothing had changed. MIA, Alex's voice was thick with tension, his eyes searching hers for something, some kind of understanding, some kind of forgiveness. This wasn't supposed to happen like this. Her mind spun, trying to hold on to any semblance of clarity. What is going on? Why are you two here? Why is Dad? Why now? The words came out in a rush, a desperate need for answers driving her voice to crack. Alex's face hardened. We don't have time for explanations. It's not what you think. This wasn't supposed to reach you. But now you're in it, and there's no turning back. MEA felt her chest tighten, her breath short, like the walls were closing in on her. She wanted to scream, to lash out, to demand everything she had been denied. But there was something in the way her father stood there, his gaze dark and knowing, that made her hold back. She wasn't just fighting for answers anymore. She was fighting for her safety, for her life. The stakes had never been higher, and she wasn't sure who could be trusted anymore. Her own family, the people who had always been the foundation of her world, were part of something she didn't understand. Jenna took a step forward, her voice calm but laced with urgency. "You need to listen to me, MIA. This isn't just about the dress, or the designer, or even the people pulling the strings. This is about your future and the consequences of digging too deep. They've been watching you, all of you, for longer than you can imagine." Mia's eyes flicked between Jenna, Alex, and her father, trying to piece it all together. It was as if she were surrounded by strangers, the ones she'd trusted most, each of them holding a secret they'd kept hidden for years. Her father, the one who had walked away from their family without explanation, now stood in the very place where her entire life had been turned upside down. "Dad, what is this?" she asked, her voice trembling with a mixture of disbelief and betrayal. "What are you involved in?" Her father's eyes softened, but there was a sadness there, an emptiness that Mia had never seen before. It was as if the man standing before her wasn't the same person who had left them years ago. "Mia, I wish I could tell you everything. I really do. But there are things you're not ready to understand. Things that go far beyond what you think you know. Your safety is at risk now. That's why we had to step in. We had no choice." Jenna gave Mia a pleading look. "You don't have much time. They're going to come for you, whether you like it or not. And if you don't make a decision now, it will be too late." "It's already too late for me." Mia's mind raced, and her pulse pounded in her ears. Her entire world had been turned upside down in the blink of an eye. The designer, the fake dress, the mysterious messages, none of it made sense anymore. It was all part of something much bigger, something that she wasn't prepared for. And now, she had to make a choice: go with her father and brother, and leave behind everything she thought she knew, or continue this path on her own, risking everything for the truth. The weight of the decision pressed down on her chest, suffocating her, as if every breath was too heavy to take. The temptation to run, to leave all of this behind and start over, was real, but deep down, she knew she couldn't. She couldn't walk away from the truth, not now, not after everything that had happened. But at what cost? Jenna's face was etched with fear, her eyes flicking nervously to her father and Alex, as if she were silently begging Mia to make the choice to leave, to escape while she still could. Mia's gaze shifted back to her father. "What do you want from me, Dad? What's the real reason you're here?" Her father's expression remained stoic, but there was a flicker of something in his eyes, a regret, a sorrow that seemed to have been buried for years. "I never wanted to pull you into this. I never wanted you to get involved in the things I did. But it's too late now. The only way out for us is to keep you safe, Mia. You can't go any further with this. The truth, it's dangerous. You don't understand what they're capable of." The pressure was unbearable. Mia wanted to scream, to demand the answers she deserved, but the fear, the uncertainty, held her back. Her family was keeping secrets, and those secrets were about to destroy everything she thought she knew. If she stayed, she would be walking into a firestorm she might not survive. But if she left, she might never find out the truth. The consequences of both choices were too high. She could feel the weight of their gazes on her, all of them silently urging her to make the decision, to choose safety over truth, or truth over everything else. "Make your choice, Mia," Jenna whispered, almost pleading. "But know this. Whatever you decide, there's no turning back." The darkness of the warehouse felt suffocating, the walls pressing in as Mia faced the impossible choice of her life. Her future was uncertain, and the weight of what she might lose, what she might never find out, was enough to break her. But whatever she chose, she knew she would never be the same again. Mia's heart pounded in her chest as she stood at the crossroads of a decision she never imagined she'd have to make. Her father's words echoed in her ears, a warning wrapped in regret. But no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't shake the feeling that there was more at play here, more than just her own safety, more than her family's secrets, and more than the designer who had been pulling strings from the shadows. This wasn't just her fight anymore. The weight of what was happening pressed down on her, suffocating her, as she realized just how deep the rabbit hole went. I didn't want you to get involved in this, MIA, her father said again, his voice tight, filled with an anguish MIA had never heard before. But the truth is, they've been watching you. And not just you, this whole thing, it goes much deeper than you could ever imagine. Your search, your involvement, it's triggered something dangerous. They know everything now. A wave of panic washed over her as his words sank in. They, who were they? Who had been monitoring her every move, controlling the narrative, and, worse, had the power to pull her family into this chaos? She tried to hold herself together, to focus on the next step, but her mind was spinning out of control. Jenna had been right. This wasn't just about a designer or a fake dress, this was about an entire network, a web of deceit and manipulation that stretched far beyond anything MIA could have prepared for. Before she could speak, Alex stepped forward, his face tight with strain. MIA, we don't have much time. We need to go now, or it's over. You need to trust me. This isn't just some shady operation anymore. This is bigger. We're talking about people who control things, politicians, corporations, media. This is all part of a larger agenda. The revelation hit her like a slap in the face. People at the highest levels, they were behind it all. MIA had only started with the idea of solving a simple mystery about a dress and a designer, and now, she was being dragged into a conspiracy that spanned across the very foundation of society. She felt her legs weaken, and for a second, she thought she might collapse. The walls of the warehouse closed in, the air thick with dread. No, MIA said, shaking her head, disbelief making her voice waver. This can't be real. My life, it's all been a lie. All of it. Her father's eyes darkened. This is the world you've been living in, MIA. The one you didn't see. The one I tried to keep you away from. But now you know too much. You're a liability. They'll come for you if you don't make a choice. MIA turned to Jenna, her mind racing for answers, but the look on her friend's face told her everything she needed to know. Jenna's shoulders were slumped, her eyes hollow, as if she'd already given up. I didn't want it to be like this, she whispered, her voice barely audible. I didn't have a choice. No choice, the words hit MIA like a punch to the gut. Was Jenna really as trapped as she appeared? Or had she been working with these people all along? The truth felt as slippery as oil in her mind, slipping out of her grasp no matter how hard she tried to hold on to it. A loud bang interrupted the silence, followed by the sound of a door slamming open. Mia's pulse spiked. Get down, Alex shouted, grabbing her by the arm and pulling her behind a stack of crates. Her mind was a blur of confusion and fear as they ducked down, her body tense and shaking. She could hear footsteps now, purposeful and fast. The sound of voices, low and urgent, filled the air. Mia's father crouched beside her, his face pale. They're here. We don't have time to explain. Just stay close. MIA tried to process what was happening, but it was as if everything she knew was coming apart in real time. The stakes were higher than she'd ever imagined. The people who were pulling the strings weren't just threatening her safety, they were threatening everything she knew to be true. Her family, her future, her very identity was in jeopardy now. Before she could speak, a figure stepped into view. It was too late to hide. Mia's breath caught in her throat as she recognized the person standing at the entrance of the warehouse, someone she never expected to see again. Ethan. Her old friend. The one person she thought she could trust. MIA, Ethan's voice was cold, detached, as if he had never known her at all. It's too late. You've crossed the line. You need to come with me now. A sickening realization crawled up Mia's spine. Ethan, he was involved in this too? Her mind screamed for an explanation, but there were no answers coming. There was no comfort in his familiar face, no warmth in his eyes. The person who once seemed like a safe harbor in a world full of chaos was now the enemy. Ethan, what the hell is going on? MIA gasped, her voice rising in panic. Why are you doing this? You were my friend. Ethan took a step closer, his face expressionless. I'm doing this because I have to. This is bigger than you, bigger than all of us. You're out of your depth, MIA. And you're already too late. They've already made their move.
Who?
MIA demanded, feeling the walls closing in, every moment more suffocating than the last.
Who are they?
Ethan's lips curled into something that resembled a bitter smile.
You don't need to know.
What you need to do is come with me now. Trust me, this isn't a game. This is real. It's about power, things you've never even imagined. Her heart raced, her mind a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. Betrayal. Confusion. Rage. And fear, pure and raw. It all felt like a nightmare she couldn't escape.
No.
I'm not going anywhere with you. Not after everything you've done. Ethan's eyes narrowed, his face hardening.
Then you're making a huge mistake.
He turned to her father, his voice low. You know what happens when people don't follow orders. The air was thick with unspoken threats, and MIA could feel the tension in the room building to a breaking point. But in that moment, something inside her snapped. She wasn't going to be pushed around anymore. Not by Jenna, not by Ethan, not by her own family. The truth might be darker than she ever imagined, but she wasn't going to let them control her. She wasn't going to let fear dictate her future. She stood up, her body trembling with adrenaline.
No more secrets. No more lies.
I'm done being a pawn in your game. Before anyone could stop her, MIA turned and ran. Every instinct screamed at her to escape, to get out of this nightmare, but she knew she couldn't outrun the truth. No matter where she went, it would follow her. The only way out was through, and the only thing she could trust now was herself. But as she bolted toward the door, the sound of footsteps behind her told her she wasn't running alone. Whoever they weren't going to let her go that easily. The game had changed, and MIA was about to face the truth head-on. But what would it cost her? Mia's breath came in ragged gasps as she sprinted through the darkened streets, her mind racing to make sense of everything. She could hear the footsteps behind her, getting closer, the sound of her pursuers chasing her through the night, relentless and determined. Every corner she turned only seemed to lead her deeper into a web she couldn't escape. The world around her felt like it was closing in, a trap with no way out, and yet, despite the fear clawing at her chest, she couldn't stop now. She couldn't give up, not when she was so close to the truth. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, a jarring reminder of just how much chaos had erupted in her life. She pulled it out quickly, her fingers trembling as she saw the message flash on the screen. It was from Jenna. They know where you are. You need to stop running, MIA. They will find you, and they will end this. Mia's stomach dropped. The last message Jenna had sent hadn't exactly been reassuring, but this one was different. The weight of those words felt like a death sentence. She couldn't stop running, though. She wouldn't. Not until she had the answers. Not until she knew who was really behind this nightmare. She turned another corner, and suddenly, there it was, a familiar place. The old, abandoned building. The very place where she had first stumbled upon the fake designer dress, where everything had started. Her legs burned from the sprint, her lungs begging for air, but she pushed forward, knowing this was where the endgame was about to unfold. The night was silent except for the sound of her own footsteps, and for a brief, fleeting moment, she thought she might be alone. But then, a voice cut through the air, and MIA froze.
MIA.
She whipped around, her eyes locking with the one person she had been running from, Ethan. His face was set, his eyes cold and calculating. He wasn't just a friend anymore. He was the enemy, a pawn in a game much larger than either of them could comprehend. You should have listened to me, MIA, he said, his voice low and measured, but there was a flicker of something behind his words. But now, you're in way too deep. You were part of it all along, weren't you? Mia's voice wavered, but she couldn't back down now. You were never my friend. You've been lying to me from the start. Ethan's lips twisted into a humorless smile. It's not about friendship, MIA. It's about survival. We don't get to choose who we align with when everything is on the line. You should have realized that sooner. You've been used, just like the rest of us. Mia's blood boiled, her mind racing as she pieced together the truth she hadn't seen before. Used. That's what it had been all along. She wasn't the only one caught in this web. Ethan, her family, even Jenna, they were all pieces of a much larger puzzle, and she had been too blinded by the illusion of trust to see it. But now, as the night stretched on, she was starting to understand the bigger picture. "Who's behind all this, Ethan? Who's pulling the strings?" she demanded, the desperation in her voice thick with emotion. "Why me? What's the point of all of this?" Ethan hesitated, his gaze flicking over his shoulder toward the shadows, as if waiting for something or someone. "It's not just about you, MIA. You're a piece of the puzzle, but there's something bigger at play here. People want control, and they'll do anything to get it. We're talking about a network that spans generations, families, corporations. The designer dress was just the start. This is about manipulating perception, controlling power. The truth is, MIA, we're all just pawns in a game that's been in motion long before we were ever born." As his words sank in, MIA felt a sickening wave of realization wash over her. This wasn't just about a fake dress or a mysterious designer. This was about power on a scale she couldn't comprehend. And her family, her friends, they had all been swept into it, unwilling participants in a game with stakes so high that no one could ever truly win. MIA took a step forward, shaking with anger. "And are you just going to let them control you? You could have stopped this. You could have helped me." Ethan's eyes softened for a fraction of a second, but the moment passed. "You don't understand, MIA. I never had a choice. None of us do. And neither do you." Just then, the air seemed to shift. A car screeched to a halt behind them, its headlights blinding. Mia's heart skipped a beat as the door opened, and a new figure stepped out. This time, it wasn't a familiar face. It was someone MIA hadn't seen before, an older man, sharply dressed, his posture impeccable. His expression, however, was colder than anything she had ever seen. MIA instinctively took a step back, her mind trying to piece together who this new player was in the twisted game she had been thrust into. The man's gaze locked onto her with a piercing intensity. "MIA, he said, his voice calm, almost too calm. "You've come far, but it's time for you to stop. You're out of your depth. Who are you?" MIA demanded, her voice shaking with a mixture of fear and defiance. She wasn't going to let him intimidate her, not now, not after everything she had uncovered. The man smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "My name is Victor Westbrook. And I'm the one who's been watching you, MIA. I've been watching all of you." Mia's stomach churned as the name hit her like a brick. Westbrook. It wasn't just a name, it was an empire. One of the most powerful families in the country, with connections that spanned the highest echelons of politics, business, and entertainment. They controlled everything. And now, she was staring down the very mastermind behind it all. "I don't know what you think you've found," Westbrook continued, his voice oozing with a dangerous calm, "but this is where it ends for you." MIA felt her blood run cold. "No," she whispered, her eyes flicking to Ethan, who was now standing at her side. "You don't get to control me. Not anymore." Victor's expression hardened, and in that moment, MIA knew. She knew the game had changed. This wasn't just about secrets anymore. This wasn't about uncovering the truth. This was about survival. Her survival. The truth was too dangerous to expose. People like Victor didn't just play games, they destroyed lives to protect what they had built. And MIA? She had no intention of becoming a casualty. The final confrontation loomed. And as the weight of the conspiracy, the lies, and the betrayals came crashing down on her, MIA made a decision that would alter everything. She wasn't going to back down. She wasn't going to let this man, this empire, win. And she certainly wasn't going to let her family or her friends continue to be pawns in this game. With a fierce determination burning in her chest, MIA did the one thing she hadn't expected to do. She ran straight at the truth, with every ounce of her being, and in that final moment, she saw everything for what it truly was, a battle that was far from over. The stakes were higher than she had ever imagined, but now, the fight was hers. And just as the darkness closed in around her, she realized one thing. The final twist wasn't the conspiracy. It was what she had become. A force of her own. The truth might have been twisted, but she was going to unravel it, no matter the cost. MIA stood on the rooftop, the city lights stretched out before her like a sea of stars, shimmering in the cold night air. The past few weeks felt like a lifetime, like an entire world had shifted, and she had no choice but to adapt to a reality that was darker, more dangerous, and far more complicated than she had ever imagined. The answers she had been seeking had all come together, but the truth had come at a cost. She had lost friends, gained enemies, and in some ways, had lost herself along the way. The weight of what she had uncovered settled heavy in her chest, but there was a sense of finality now, a moment of stillness in the chaos, as if the storm had finally passed. It wasn't over, not entirely, but MIA knew she had made it through. Her heart still beat in her chest, stronger than it had ever been, because she had found something more valuable than just the truth. She had found herself. The confrontation with Victor Westbrook, the revelation of the true extent of the conspiracy, had shaken her to the core. But in the end, it wasn't about defeating the Westbrooks of the world or exposing the hidden network that had controlled everything for so long. It was about reclaiming her agency, her voice. For so long, MIA had been at the mercy of others, of her family's expectations, of her friendships, and even of a life that had been dictated by a single event, the fake designer dress. But in that final, desperate moment, MIA had taken control. She had fought back, not with weapons or tactics, but with her resolve to live on her own terms. The road hadn't been easy, and the scars would remain forever, but she was alive, and she had her future ahead of her. MIA glanced at the piece of paper clenched in her hand, the last remaining clue from the final encounter. It was nothing more than a name that would carry the weight of this entire ordeal, the name of the one person who had been behind the entire scheme, the orchestrator. But even as she read it, she realized the name meant little in the grand scheme of things. Because what mattered now wasn't the people in the shadows. It wasn't the men and women who had played the game of power, who had tried to control her every move. It was MIA, standing here, refusing to be defined by anyone but herself. As the wind ruffled her hair, she thought about Ethan. The betrayal had hurt more than she had expected. He had been her friend, someone she trusted. But in the end, MIA had learned something critical. Sometimes the people we think we know are the ones who hide the darkest secrets. And sometimes, the ones we think we've lost are the ones who help us find our way back to who we really are. She didn't know what had become of Ethan. Whether he was still tangled in the web of lies and manipulation, or whether he had found his own path out, MIA couldn't say. But she wasn't going to wait for him to come back into her life. She wasn't going to be shackled by the past anymore. There was something liberating about letting go, about not needing the answers to every question. Not everything had to be explained. Some things, MIA had come to realize, were simply meant to remain mysteries. Jenna, too, had been a part of this. Her role had been murky, her motivations unclear. But in the end, MIA understood the complexity of her friend's position. Jenna had been caught up in a world far beyond her control, trying to survive, just like MIA had. Maybe they would talk again one day. But for now, MIA needed space to heal, space to rebuild. The world wasn't going to stop spinning just because she had uncovered its darkness. Life would go on, and MIA would move forward, determined not to let the past define her. In the distance, MIA could hear the sound of footsteps behind her. She turned slowly, her eyes meeting the figure approaching. It was her father, the man who had tried so hard to protect her from the truth, the man who had been a part of this mess all along. He looked older now, worn down by the events that had unfolded, but there was something in his eyes, a weariness, yes, but also a hint of pride. He had never truly understood her drive to uncover the truth, but now, perhaps, he did. "You did it," he said softly, his voice carrying the weight of everything they had been through. "You faced it all and came out the other side." MIA didn't know how to respond. What was there to say? The words she had wanted to speak about betrayal, about trust, about all the things that had been left unsaid no longer seemed necessary. They were both standing here, together, in the aftermath of everything, and somehow, that was enough. "I had to," she said finally, her voice steady. "I couldn't live in the dark anymore. I needed to know what was really going on. I needed to know who I am." Her father nodded, his eyes softening. "You've always been stronger than I gave you credit for. You'll be all right, MIA. Whatever comes next, you've earned it." Mia's gaze lingered on the city below, the sprawling metropolis that seemed so vast and so impersonal from this height. She had been just another face in the crowd, another player in someone else's game. But now, she understood. She understood that the world would continue to turn, whether she was part of it or not, but the power she had over her own life was something no one could take away from her. Still, even as she stood there with her father, the pieces of the puzzle still didn't fully fit together. MIA had uncovered much, but she knew there was more beneath the surface that even now, she couldn't quite grasp. The name on that paper, the one that Victor Westbrook had given her, would never leave her mind. There were still questions left unanswered, whispers in the shadows, and MIA felt an undeniable pull to uncover more. But that was a fight for another day. For now, she had her peace. She had made it this far. And whatever came next, whatever twisted turns the story would take, she would face it with the same resolve that had gotten her through it all. The final twist of this story wasn't in the revelation of a grand conspiracy, or in the face of the villain who had been pulling the strings. It was in MIA herself. She was no longer a pawn in anyone's game. She was the one writing her own story now. And no matter how much darkness she uncovered, she knew one thing: she would never stop fighting for the truth. It wasn't just about the answers, it was about owning her future, and her past, and everything in between. And with that, MIA took one last look at the city lights and walked away, her future wide open, the night waiting for her next move. But as the sound of footsteps echoed behind her, and the night air seemed to close in, MIA couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning.